On November 16, 2013, a Twitter user going by the handle Hi I'm Kayla tweeted, "Too drunk to care." Only a few hours later, that Twitter user, Kayla Mendoza, killed 2 people after driving the wrong way on the highway with a blood alcohol content of twice the legal limit. Prosecutors later used Kayla's tweet in court as evidence of her mental state. She was sentenced to 24 years in prison. But this wasn't the only time a tweet has gotten someone in trouble. Even well-known figures have landed themselves in hot water over a tweet. Elon Musk found himself in trouble with the SEC after tweeting that he was considering taking Tesla private and had funding secured. The tweet moved Tesla stock immediately, and regulators said the statement was misleading because the financing wasn't locked in the way the tweet suggested. Musk and Tesla later reached a settlement with the SEC that included fines and changes to how Elon's posts would be handled. Tweets are fast, but they don't disappear. People often forget that the internet keeps receipts, and when crime is involved, tweets can be evidence. A tweet can put you at a place you later deny being. It can show what you knew before anyone else did. It can reveal what you were planning, what you were doing, or what you were willing to admit when you thought no one was watching. Sometimes a tweet shows up in court as a timestamp. Other times it's used to argue what someone was thinking before anything happened. Just after midnight on August 20th, 2016, a Twitter user going by the name Zach_Pinton tweeted, "I need to move out of my place before I viciously murder my roommates." At the time, nobody watching Twitter had any reason to think it would become part of a real case. People post things like this all the time. It reads like frustration. It reads like someone trying to be funny. But 2 days later, it was being read in a very different context. Late Sunday morning on August 21st, police got a 911 call from a 21-year-old man named Zachary Pinton. Reporting says he told the operator he had shot his roommate. The roommate was 41-year-old Danny Garofalo, who owned the house they were living in. Police responded to the home. Garofalo was found dead. Pinton was taken into custody without a fight. A handgun was recovered at the scene. He told police a struggle started when Garofalo came into his bedroom and told him he had to move out. Pinton said Garofalo tackled him, took his phone, and threatened to kill him. Pinton said he reached under his pillow for a loaded semi-automatic handgun and fired. Afterward, Pinton called 911 to report the shooting. Prosecutors, on the other hand, described it very differently. They said Garofalo was unarmed, Pinton wasn't hurt, and Pinton had other options besides shooting. The Associated Press reported that, in the months before the shooting, Pinton had tweeted several posts about guns, and of course, the tweet from 2 days before the killing about his roommates specifically. When arguing premeditation or a mindset leading up to the violence, those posts became a way to build a longer timeline or a pattern. Over the next year and a half, Pinton stayed in jail while the case worked its way through court. By 2018, the case ended with a manslaughter conviction and a prison sentence of 12 years. Zachary Pinton is eligible for release in late 2026. When tweeting and crime become involved, though, it isn't only the law which you can get in trouble with. Such is the case with rapper BTB Savage. On February 3rd, 2023, a shooting happened inside a downtown apartment in San Antonio. A 34-year-old man named Omar Richardson died there. Reporting later described the case as being treated as self-defense tied to an attempted armed robbery. A few weeks later, the rapper Daryl Gentry, better known as BTB Savage, went on Vlad TV and walked through what he says happened that night. According to him, another rapper had been messaging him to do music. Eventually, they set up a recording session at his apartment at around 10 or 11 p.m., and the other rapper pulled up with multiple people in the car. He says they came inside carrying what looked like studio equipment, but almost immediately the vibe felt off. He described them looking around his place, and then the older guy, who he understood to be the other rapper's uncle, stayed behind with him while the other guy went back out to the car. That's the moment he says he got nervous and locked the door. He said the older man started asking questions about his chain and jewelry, then pulled a gun and demanded he hand it over. BTB Savage said he started taking the chain off, and when the man reached in, he tried to grab control of the weapon. While wrestling for the gun, his girlfriend ran over with her own, and he told her to shoot. He said she fired twice into the robber's back, and later, during another scramble, a shot accidentally hit him in the elbow. He also described gunfire coming from outside the apartment door during the fight. He said rounds started punching through the door in bursts, and he and his girlfriend fired back through it. After it stopped, he said they focused on getting their child out of the apartment and getting to the hospital. He described trying to keep his son from seeing the scene while they left. At the hospital, he said they interviewed both of them, compared their stories, and told them it was self-defense and they were free to go. He also said the body was removed, but the blood stayed behind. In his words, they grabbed him and left, and he had to clean up after. Then, the tweet happened. After the apartment shooting, he tweeted these photos, which I had to censor, from inside the place while it was still blood-soaked, with the bullet hole-riddled door visible behind him. One caption on the photo read, "Too much motion." But people close to Richardson saw that post, connected it directly to his death, and felt the need to retaliate. On March 30th, 2023, BTB Savage was driving a white Mercedes near Midlane in Houston when a black Subaru SUV pulled up, and someone inside opened fire before speeding away. He was shot and killed. Houston police later charged Montrell Burley with the murder and said a second suspect was still unidentified at the time. The court records describe Burley as a close friend and fellow gang member of Omar Richardson, the man who was initially shot by BTB Savage's girlfriend, with investigators laying out that retaliation from the apartment shooting to the killing in Houston. Sometimes it isn't about evidence or even bragging. Sometimes it's just a fight that keeps escalating in public until somebody decides to act. Two guys, Kwame Dancy and Jamek Blake, had been best friends since they were kids. By 2009, they weren't on good terms anymore. Reports said the fallout had to do with a woman, and the tension started showing up in public. Over time, the argument moved on to Twitter. Prosecutors and reporters described it as a back and forth that kept getting more hostile, with messages that looked like threats and friends joining the pile-on. On December 1st, 2009, there was a tweet that got a lot of attention later. Dancy posted a message that in plain terms was a warning. "Expletive is looking for you. Don't think I won't give up your address for a price. Better chill ASAP." Later that night, Dancy was outside near his home in Harlem around West 132nd Street. A man approached him and shot him in the neck with a shotgun. He was taken to Harlem Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. 2 days later, Blake, his friend with whom he was having a Twitter beef, was arrested. Early reporting said he was charged with second-degree murder and first-degree manslaughter, and he was held without bail. After the shooting, Blake's Twitter became a part of what people pointed to when they talked about the case. One post that got repeated in coverage was a tweet that said, "R.I.P. Kwame," dated December 3rd, and there was also reporting that he showed up at the hospital and hugged Dancy's father. The outcome came later. In 2011, Blake pleaded guilty to manslaughter and was sentenced to 21 years in prison. At sentencing, he told the judge he wished he'd had better judgment than pulling a gun on his best friend, and he said his ego wouldn't let him back down. We've seen how some criminals can use Twitter, but how can someone else's tweets affect a criminal case? In late 2006, Derek Jefferson had been out with friends. He met up with a friend, went to a nightclub in Fayetteville, then drove toward Springdale and ended up in a parking lot when a different club was closed. While they were there, another car pulled up with a small group that included Erickson Demas Martinez. They invited Jefferson and his friend to a party at a duplex in Springdale, and they went. Not long after arriving, Jefferson stepped out briefly with a friend of the group to go buy cigarettes, then came back. Jefferson's friend later said he started to feel uneasy and wanted to leave, but Jefferson stayed behind to look for a ride home. According to a friend of Demas Martinez, he told Jefferson he'd drive him, and the group left together in Demas Martinez's car, with Jefferson behind the wheel because he hadn't been drinking. On the way, Demas Martinez had them make stops at houses, including one where he went inside alone and came back out, and another where he and a friend got out to talk. After that second stop, Demas Martinez asked if anyone had a cell phone. When everyone said no, he pulled a gun, pointed it at Jefferson, and ordered him out of the car while a friend held a knife on him. They demanded money, and Jefferson was ordered to hand over clothing and a hat. As Demas Martinez turned back toward the car, Jefferson followed, and Demas Martinez shot him. Investigators were later notified of a possible homicide just inside the Springdale city limits on December 30th, and found Jefferson's body with a single gunshot wound to the center of his forehead. Erickson Demas Martinez was charged with capital murder and aggravated robbery. The case went to trial a few years later in Benton County, with the death penalty on the table. From the start, the judge gave the jury the standard rules. Don't discuss the case, don't do your own research, and don't communicate about it outside the courtroom. During the trial, defense lawyers noticed that one juror, identified in the record as Juror 2, Randy Franco, had been posting on Twitter anyway. One tweet that later got a lot of attention was posted around midday on sentencing day, right after evidence had wrapped up. It said, "Choices to be made, hearts to be broken, we each define the great line." The judge questioned the juror in court. The juror admitted he tweeted during the trial, but said he hadn't talked about the particulars of the case. When asked about what the choices tweet meant, he explained that the jury would have to make a huge decision and that people would react either way. The court decided to keep him on the jury. That might have been the end of it, but it wasn't. After that warning and questioning, the same juror kept tweeting. Court filings described 2 tweets posted on April 1st, 2010, while the jury was deliberating during the sentencing phase. One was a religious-style line: "If it's wisdom we seek, we should run to the strong tower." Then, at 3:45 p.m., he tweeted, "It's over." The jury didn't officially announce its sentencing decision until 4:35 p.m., where Dimas Martinez was given the death sentence. Defense lawyers moved for a new trial, arguing that the problem wasn't only what the tweets said, it was the fact that a juror had openly ignored instructions in a capital case, and then kept doing it after being confronted. The trial judge denied the motion and said there was no prejudice. On December 8, 2011, the Arkansas Supreme Court reversed the conviction and sent the case back for a new trial. The opinion focused on juror misconduct. One juror who had fallen asleep for several minutes, and the tweeting juror who continued posting after he'd been questioned and told to stop. The court also pointed out something practical about the tweeting. One of the juror's followers was a reporter, meaning the outside world got advance notice that deliberations were over before the court even had the verdict. After the reversal, the case was set up again for trial, but in July 2012, Dimas Martinez pleaded guilty and received life without parole, taking the death penalty off the table. At the end of the day, none of these stories are really about Twitter. They're about what happens when something you say in public gets treated as such. It's easy to forget the consequences a tweet can have. Sometimes it's a throwaway line. Sometimes it's a threat. Sometimes it's a caption you post because you think you're proving a point or controlling the story. But once it's out there, it stops just being a post.